I'm Dr. John, and this is your Maintenance Minute. We've been talking about the storeroom as a core value driver, and I want to continue that discussion with this little life cycle model right here. You're probably familiar with this. I've kind of made it fairly basic for a general discussion, but the life cycle of a piece of equipment starts really when we're building the thing. We're starting to invest some money in it. It usually starts with the design, build, and install, and many of you have heard me say, if you design something poorly, build it cheaply, and install it hastily, you don't have a world-class asset on your hands. You got a nightmare on your hands for the next 20 years. And then we typically go into this certification, commissioning, validation, and startup phase. Put this thing into production. At the very end of our life cycle, of course, we're disposing of it, cutting it out of the ground, getting rid of it, possibly bringing in a new asset. But of course, the O&M is the longer phase, and it could be anywhere from 5 to 20 years. Of course, if it's a nightmare piece of equipment, it's probably the last 1 or 2 years. It's during this period that we're doing preventive, predictive, corrective, and yes, we're doing emergency maintenance. This is where the storeroom maintenance, everybody comes into play to keep this asset performing and delivering the value that we intended. That's pure asset management right there. But think about this. Every one of your assets has the same components, and we've talked about this. You've got a motor and a coupler and a gearbox and a sprocket and a chain. You got a sheave and a belt and a pump, and you've got a cylinder. You got wiring harnesses, you got buttons, you got levers, you've got sensors, you got thermocouples. All our equipment has the exact same components. In order for this machine, this asset, to deliver the value which we intended, it has got to run reliably, and it's got to perform at the level that we intended it to. And the way that we do that is to ensure that the parts that we replace, because this thing's going to need some service in 20 years, the parts that we replace are at least as good as the parts that it came with. That's the inherent reliability. Now, who is going to make sure that all those motors, couplers, gearboxes, sprockets, belts, shivs, chains, pumps, valves, you know the list. Who's going to make sure they're all available for the next 20 years? We cannot count on Motion Industries to come to our rescue all the time. That is definitely not a strategy. I'm suggesting that we make the storeroom, or we at least get the attitude right, that the storeroom is a core value driver. It is as least important as people, principal supplies, products and services, capital money. It's at least that important because we've got to make sure we have access to those parts in the next 20 years. I think a well-intended and a well-trained and a well-equipped storeroom can make that happen, but not if we don't see it as very important. That is to say, not if we don't see it as a core value driver. I hope you will consider this point. I'm Dr. John, and this has been your Maintenance Minute.